everyone, it's me, Crystal. Welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. If not, welcome for the very first time to my little art corner here on YouTube. Lately I've been doing a couple of watercolor landscapes, some really bright, fun, colorful ones, but today I wanted to do something a little darker, a little more surreal, and I wanted to play around with some markers and focus a lot on line work and stippling. So today I'm doing a seven-eyed, seven-horned lamb. As you can see, I am using a reference photo I found on Google. This is one that has been shared around on Pinterest quite a bit. I tried to see if I could find the original source for the photo, but alas, I could not. I'm basically just using it to get an idea of what it could look like, but with all of the changes I am doing, including the extra eyes, horns, and even some of the positioning of the parts of the body that I'm showing. A lot of it's still very different. There will be a list of all the supplies I am using in this project down in that description box. At first I just got my sketch in with a Bic Mechanical Pencil, and I'm currently going over it with a Copic liner. And the size of the Copic liner is a 0.3. I'm using a toned paper, Strathmore mixed media paper in blue, and the size is 9x12. I'm specifically using this paper to be the mid-tone of all of the shading that we're gonna have going on. If you've seen any of my 2019 Inktober videos, you're going to know that I really enjoy using this paper for black and white projects like this one. For the most part, I am using black markers. I do end up pulling in a gray mid-tone color marker to help blend stuff out, and some different reds for the eyes. I quickly realized because of the tone of the paper that the red markers I was using for the eyes weren't really cutting it and doing exactly what I wanted. So I ended up pulling in some Daler Rowney Aquafine watercolor ink in cadmium red hue, just to help brighten it up and make that red a lot more intense looking. For highlights, I'm pulling in a Sakura Jelly Roll pen in white. A lot of this project was literally stippling. I'm just doing a bunch of small, tiny little dots all around this paper here. I also use a little bit of hatching in certain areas. This one was really therapeutic to do, probably because it took a lot longer for me to do than some other projects that I have done recently. It's just very cathartic to take the time to do each of these little dots and lines and just go with the flow and let it happen. And this is an idea I've had for about a month of what I wanted to do. I just wasn't sure of exactly how I wanted to do it. Also, when the idea first came to me, I was a little tipsy, couple glasses of wine in the cups, as you will, and I wasn't sure if it was something I actually wanted to draw or if it was just one of those random fleeting ideas you get that sound great in the moment, but then when you go to do it, you're like, nah, never mind. But the idea persisted, and the ways I could do it just kept going around my mind, so I decided to actually sit down and work on it. I wanted to find references of a sheep that actually had horns so that I could base around the couple of horns they have and throw in the other ones. And I wanted to look at something where I could figure out where I could put extra eyes as I saw fit. And this was an interesting project because normally if I do draw animals, they're like cats, maybe bunnies. I haven't really ventured out into any livestock options. It was just nice to kind of stretch a different set of skills and play around with this and slowly figure out how I was doing it as I was going. As I said earlier, for a lot of this I'm using a couple of different black markers, and I am making sure I'm using ones that have different sized tips. I find this very helpful when I am doing any project that involves a lot of stippling or different line weights. For the horns, the texture on there, I'm doing a bunch of different sized lines, and I'm trying to make sure that the lines aren't perfectly straight, that they follow the curves of the horns, and that they've got a little bit of a squiggly quality going on. I do occasionally pull in like a mid-toned gray-blue Copic marker to help blend out some of those areas, as I've mentioned earlier. Pulling in this marker also helps add a little bit more depth because it adds another tone. At this point in the project, I realized that my one eye on here was looking a little more funky than the other ones, so I went ahead and used some of that red ink again, went over it, and then built around it with the other markers when it was dry. You can still layer and fix stuff to an extent when you're using this toned paper and if you're layering and using lines this way. There are also various points during this project where I start trying to sharpen up some lines on that darn outline. And for that, I mostly use the 2 smaller liners that I am pulling into this project to help gradually build it out and fill it in as I go, just to make it a little more smooth. Sometimes the first line can be a little squiggly, and when you're shading like this, you can lose it a little bit, so going over it a couple times does help with that. Also, because of all the texture work I have going on in the subject itself, I did intentionally leave the background plain. I didn't want any of my line work to get lost in the background, which can happen sometimes. I also just wanted to make sure all the focus goes onto the subject itself. I was also worried that if I did a background, especially a heavily detailed one, that it would just be too much going on for the eye to be able to actually look at it. It'd be overwhelming. There are certain areas of the drawing that I left pretty much completely black with a thicker marker, and then used the smaller markers to help pull lines out of that, to help break up that darkness. I really wanted there to be those deep, dark, thick areas of black too. I think it helps a lot with adding some depth to this guy. There were points when I was doing this where I was contemplating pulling in some silver or some gold reflective ink. I'm happy I ended up not doing that because I think in the long run it would have just pulled away from all of the work that was done a little bit too much. It'd be too distracting. I did find myself cleaning off the white gel pen quite a few different times, either on the tape that I have holding down the drawing itself, or by using my nails to kind of pick off any extra little bits that might have been on there. It worked pretty well throughout it, but sometimes you just gotta clean a little bit of that gunk off, and you definitely want to make sure that the markers and the ink that you have put down are already dry before you start pulling in that white gel pen. For the neck and shoulders area of the animal, I do bring in a lot more stippling, and I also start making a couple of different lines to indicate breaks in the floof of the animal. While I'm doing the line work and doing the stippling, I am attempting to keep in mind the anatomy of the animal underneath, trying to think about where the bones and the muscles will lay, and how the skin and floof would be affected by that. I'm also trying to ensure that I have some really nice bright highlights and some deep dark shadows. Also, I want to make sure that I have some midtones to help connect the two and to break it up a little bit. There is a point while drawing where I realize that it's a very top-heavy composition because of all of the horns, and I do decide to extend out the bit of the body I have in an attempt to even it out just a little bit. I do bring in lines using the white gel pen in some of the deepest areas of shadow on that neck. This helps break up the shadows, and it also helps indicate some more texture in that area. Throughout the drawing, I do allow the tone of the paper to show through the stippling and line work I'm doing. This helps me with my shading. And this is something that happened after the drawing was finished, but always remember to be careful when you are using tape on paper that it's a tape that actually works with the paper you're using. The painter's tape that I got is actually a lot tackier than what I'm used to, so it's a little bit more sticky. It ended up pulling up some of the layers of paper, which is kind of a bummer. At least it's at a point where I can just trim it off. So even though there was an oopsie, it's still fixable. I'll just have to keep that in mind if I use this tape again to maybe stick it to my pants a couple of extra times and rip it off to help bring that adhesive level down to a point where it won't rip the paper. At this point in the drawing, I am just stippling and doing some more lines and moving around certain areas of the drawing to help even it out. I also end up moving lines on the little chest area of our creature here just to help it look a little bit better. Since I adjusted the width of him, I had to move some other stuff around as well. Luckily, even with marker, you can still do that, you just have to be a little careful about how you do it. This drawing took me about 3 days to do, and part of that was because after so much stippling and focusing in on such minute areas, I needed to step away a couple times and come back to it, because with something like this where it is a lot of small details that you are just magnifying in your eyesight so much, it's easy to lose track of the larger picture. Stepping away and coming back helps with that a lot. It's always a good idea when you're doing a project to walk away for a few minutes, grab a snack, go do something, and then come back and see how it looks with some fresh eyes. If you don't do that, you tend to get more frustrated more quickly and easily. And I'm going to apologize right now. The last little bit of footage where I finish him up, the quality is going to be different because the lighting's very different. The final day I worked on it, it ended up being super rainy and I wasn't able to use as much natural sunlight as I was the previous 2 days. So it looks a little different. Once again, sorry about that. And on this last day, I just moved a couple of lines around and then further defined them and sharpened up that outline. But this project, and therefore this video, is pretty much finished. If you liked it, please hit that like button. If you have any comments, questions, feelings, or concerns, please let me know all about them in the comment section down below. I look forward to hearing from you. If you want to see more videos like this, please feel free to subscribe. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day or night to watch this video and listen to me ramble. I greatly appreciate it. I look forward to hearing from you guys soon, and you'll definitely be hearing from me soon. Bye, everybody!